Ezra really nailed it, huh?
Don't take this the wrong way, you guys, but, Mandalorians are crazy.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Welcome back to Rebels Revisited. It's so exciting to be getting into all the Mandalorian stuff because everyone's so hyped about this season of The Mandalorian. So season 3 of my Rebels rewatch really could not have come at a better time. Let's get into this Mandalorian chaos. This is Imperial Supercommandos Revisited. This episode starts out with Sabine visiting Fen Rao in his cell to play a game of Cubicad and try to again convince him to join the rebellion. I love the trivia behind this. So this is the first canon appearance of Cubicad. Is that how you say it? Is it Cubicad? Cubicad? The creative team was going to have Rao and Sabine playing Dedrick, but decided to use Cubicad instead because it's a specifically Mandalorian game and they wanted to use something that was culturally relevant to the characters. Since the game involves stabbing knives into blocks, the creative team had taken to calling it Stabble behind the scenes, and I think that's hilarious. This is a really cool scene because while Rao and Sabine play this strategy game, they're sort of playing each other in a mental sense. Sabine is trying to get Rao to join the rebellion, while Rao is trying to get Sabine to join the Protectors. So playing the strategy game is a metaphor for what's happening interpersonally. From there, it's off to the war room where we find out that the Protectors have mysteriously lost contact with the rebellion. No one knows why, but Rao suspects something is wrong, so he goes to Concord Dawn with Sabine, Ezra, and Chopper to investigate. And something is indeed wrong. The Protectors were attacked and wiped out. Sabine thinks it's the work of the Empire, while Rao thinks it was other Mandalorians. What they don't predict is that it could be both, because Mandalorian stories are always chaotic like that. I think the most interesting thing about this episode is getting to see the dynamic between Sabine and Rao. Here's a conversation that they have that shows the tension between them pretty well.
It's all your fault. If I'd been here instead of locked away by you and your rebels, I could have prevented this.
We didn't mean for this to happen, you know that. They were my people too.
Don't talk to me about your people. What do you know of loyalty?
It's the part that goes, they were my people too, don't talk to me about your people, what do you know about loyalty? That part. Sabine has been isolated from Mandalorians for quite some time, but she still identifies with that culture. She still feels like Mandalorians are her people, but Rao only sees her as a traitor. And that's ironic, because the only reason she's a traitor is because she's no longer allied with the Empire, which is only a thing in the first place because she wanted to save her family and her people. She was more of a traitor while with the Empire because of the weapons she made and the ways that she helped the Empire oppress her people. So there's definitely irony there that Fen Rao accuses her of not being loyal when it was loyalty that caused her to make a hard decision that led to her alienation. They're also interesting because they are the only two Mandalorians on the show at this point, so they have this really significant, deep commonality that no one else shares. That makes the tension between them a matter of culture. It's not just a disagreement, it's deeper than that. All of that combined definitely makes for an interesting dynamic between them. And then we meet Gar Saxon. He's the worst, but it's also cool that they could bring him into animation here. Son of Dathomir would have been his first appearance in animation, and the Clone Wars had also not yet been saved, so we didn't see him in Season 7 yet, so they still found a way to bring him into his intended medium through Rebels. This show was definitely a great opportunity for the creatives who also worked on the Clone Wars because they got to do things that they couldn't do in the Clone Wars. It must have been great to tie up loose ends or introduce things that went unproduced. Must have been satisfying. So anyway, Gar Saxon. The entire idea of the Imperial Supercommandos is the wildest thing. Mandalorians who serve the Empire. The Empire that purges the Mandalorians. What is it with Gar Saxon and allying with outsiders who want to control Mandalorians? Like, first it was Maul, now it's the Empire. I mean, it's just because he wants power, and he'll ally himself with whatever side he thinks will give him that, so whatever side looks like it could be the winning side, I guess, which is pretty un-Mandalorian of him. I think a true Mandalorian would want power in the name of Mandalore, not against it. He just wants to bring honor to himself, not to Mandalore, which is why it definitely makes sense for him to be allied with the Empire.
He wanted to be our ruler, but he had no honor.
That's why the Empire put him in charge.
So Ezra gets captured by Saxon, who will interrogate him. Sabine wants to save Ezra, but Rao isn't willing to stick his neck out that far. I really like this exchange between them.
You want to get yourself killed trying to rescue your friend? Be my guest. All I care about is making Saxon and his traitors pay. But now is not the time for that.
Well, I'm not after revenge. Just my friends.
I really like what that says about Sabine. Now, I don't think she's above revenge. She's ever so slightly more morally gray than that, I think. But also, I think that her love for her family can overpower feelings of anger or vengeance she may have. And that's what we're seeing here. Having Ezra back by her side is the most important thing to her, and everything else is secondary. And that tracks. That concept of love overpowering vengeance definitely comes back in a bigger way later, because a time will come when Sabine loses someone very important to her, and her initial reaction will come from a place of vengeance, but she will rein that in and adjust her actions, and she'll do that because the person she lost wouldn't want her to act out of revenge. It's her love and respect for her family that causes her to rein in her violence, and yeah. The show definitely lets us see that in ways big and small. When we cut over to Ezra, he's being questioned by Saxon and admits that he came with Fen Rao. Saxon then reveals that he is the one who attacked the Protectors in order to bait Fen Rao, and in order for him to come back to Concord Dawn so that Saxon could kill him. Sabine and Rao overhear this whole thing, and I think that Rao's reaction to this development is really interesting.
He was going to kill us anyway.
Rao, I'm sorry.
Had you and your Jedi not captured me, I'd be dead alongside my men. Executed by the Empire.
So imprisonment saved him. It was either imprisonment by the rebellion or death by the Empire, which is an interesting gray area. He was obviously better off in the rebellion's hands, but he was still a prisoner. So there's a gray area there because this is a war, and there often aren't any cut and dry good or bad choices. When you're saved by being someone's prisoner, you know that something's wrong. After that realization, Sabine and Rao form a temporary truce, and Sabine does manage to rescue Ezra, but Rao breaks the truce by stealing the Phantom, which was their getaway car. But don't worry, he'll be back. In the meantime, we get to see an intriguing interaction between Saxon and Sabine. Here's the first part I want to talk about.
Sabine never told you about her family? Well, she lies as well as you, boy. Her own mother stands with me and the Empire now.
I doubt you gave her much choice, traitor.
She came round herself after you abandoned the Imperial Academy. Your cowardice shamed your family's name and standing.
This was definitely intriguing the first time around because Sabine's past was just so mysterious that you'd hold on to every word as we learned about her bit by bit. It's been like that through the whole series so far with her. In Season 1, we learned that she was in the Academy and left. In Season 2, we learned about Ketsu and their Black Sun aspirations. But this is the first time we're really hearing about Sabine's family, and now her story is really starting to take shape. But beyond the first watch, this is still something to think about. Sabine brought shame to her family by leaving the Academy, which is the most ridiculous thing in the world because she actually did that for the good of her family. And of course we'll see this in Trials of the Darksaber, but it must be a terrible sort of pain to be cast aside by your family when you know you're doing the right thing to help them. And here's the other part of that conversation.
Had you honored your commitment, you could be wearing this armor now.
Sorry, Saxon. I like a little more color.
You think yourself a loyalist? The Empire will make Mandalore stronger than ever before.
The only one who's gotten stronger under the Empire is you.
It's the irony of it. Saxon is all, the Empire will make Mandalore stronger, and it definitely won't do that. It will do the opposite of that, actually. This really speaks to Saxon's character. It's just like Sabine says, the only one who gets stronger under the Empire is him. He acts like it's an honor to wear that armor, and I don't think a true Mandalorian would feel that way, because that armor shows allegiance to the Empire, not to Mandalore. It's not cultural or traditional. It just makes him feel powerful and important. There's no honor in that armor, at all. Like I was saying before, Saxon is not a true Mandalorian. He has no pride in Mandalore, only in himself. He's just power hungry and he fits right in with the Empire. And then Sabine and Ezra jetpack away. Iconic. But no, I actually really like this for an actual reason. For one thing, I love getting to see Sabine and Ezra work as a team like this. It shows how much their relationship has grown and matured into something that I personally look at as something akin to siblings. I know that not everyone looks at it like that, but that's kind of how I see it when I watch this, and they're close enough at this point to be able to work together like this. But it goes further than that. This is a Mandalorian and a Jedi, each using skills specific to those cultural groups to work together. Sabine is flying them away on her Mandalorian jetpack, while Ezra's using his lightsaber, and they're working together, and they're like family, which is great because Mandalorians and Jedi were enemies in the past. And I think that's the beauty of young generations, the way that they can break down old walls when there's no reason to leave them up, and they let go of historical prejudices that have no place in their lives anymore. And I think it also shows the beauty of the Ghost Crew, because there's people from all different backgrounds and cultures that formed a tight-knit family where they all feel like they belong, even if they come from different places. And then, right when Sabine and Ezra are in a really tight spot, Fen Rao comes back to save the day. How nice of him. Here's what he has to say about it.
I really thought you left us.
I considered it. Then I realized you were willing to die for your people, even though they are not Mandalorian. You haven't forgotten our ways. That has earned my respect.
So Fen Rao has a strong moral compass after all. That's been a little up in the air before now. I love that his change of heart was brought about by Sabine and how she's willing to die for her clan, the Ghost Crew, which is very Mandalorian of her. I really love pointing that out about Sabine. I know I've talked about this before with her, but I love how she preserves and evolves her culture at the same time. She doesn't stick to the old ways, but she doesn't have to. She embodies Mandalorian values. And I know I've said this before too, but she reminds me of Kanan and Ezra in that way. The three of them are a part of ancient, slightly problematic religious cultures, but they don't follow the rules of their religions to a T. Instead, the core values of their cultures are rooted in their hearts and manifest in the ways that they live their lives, which makes them, perhaps, some of the truest examples of their people. I do think it's interesting how Rebels deals with culture and how there are these running threads about losing touch with culture, reconnecting with culture, and connecting with a culture in your soul rather than in superficial ways, like having an heirloom or following rules. Every culture on the Ghost Crew is being oppressed by the Empire, so they all have to get in touch with their culture in more personal and more private ways, which is a really bittersweet and striking thing, I think. And there it is, Imperial Supercommandos. Such an interesting part of the show we're getting into now. It'll be so cool to get to the rest of the Mandalore stuff. Until then, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you always.